So we'll start with a couple of disclaimers. That down there is a road. Those are train tracks. This might be a bit noisy, but I've chosen it as a spot that doesn't disturb my wonderful WFH wife. Second disclaimer is it might be a bit long. It was inspired by questions from the aforementioned wonderful work from home wife and my youngest about it's always just the same teams in the semi-finals. This year in the semi-finals of the World Cup, we've just seen Spain beat France. I did actually give a little prediction on one of my WhatsApp groups that I could see that France midfield being overwhelmed by the Spanish. And tonight, the massive game that Tuchel might have said is just a game. This video is basically about how it's never just a game. Between England and Argentina. In the Euros 2 years ago, it was three of the same four semi-finalists with Argentina replacing the Netherlands. So is it always just the same teams at the back end of tournaments? The other question I've been asked is, this is unbelievable, Donald Trump's ICE, his personal Gestapo, have assassinated, half a dozen, something disgusting and terrifying, American citizens just in the last few weeks. Isn't that unparalleled, unheard of? So, I'm 50 years old. I'm mostly just going to cover periods within my lifetime about history and the inevitability of football. Obviously, there are other great examples. Mussolini's World Cup, probably fixed. Probably the inspiration for Hitler and Goebbels' Berlin Olympics is a great example. I'm going to limit this to just within my lifespan. So I was born 50 years ago. So we go sort of around that era. Now, the inevitability of football. It's always the same teams. My boy was talking about Real Madrid won the Champions League 3 times in a row. Nothing like that has ever happened to any other team apart from Real Madrid. The Champions League is essentially dominated by the twin La Liga super teams. Now, obviously, the beginning of the World Cup is all about Real Madrid. Before my time, that famous, just like you say, is the greatest strike force of all time. Messi, Neymar, Suarez. Well, the strike force that wins or is backstops the winning of the first 5 Champions League, it is Alfredo Di Stefano, it's Puskás and Copa. Those 3 are probably as great as any front 3. I saw a separate video on this noisy train, someone going about the presumptions, the formations you put your world 11s in tells you a lot about the era. Picking 4-4-2 all-time 11s gives you completely different groups of players from picking 4-3-3 all-time 11s. Anyway, the 1978 World Cup is the first World Cup of my lifetime. It is held in Argentina. It is a military junta. Galtieri has recently taken over, just 2 years before the year that I'm born. The next World Cup is 82 in Spain. I am born just after the death of the fascist dictator Franco, mates with the aforementioned Hitler and Goebbels. He dies just before I am born 50 years ago. It's the 1966 World Cup. 60 years ago, 60 years of hurt, the last time that England won. It was just a year after that is the first time that an English team wins the then European Cup, now Champions League, which is the great Holy Triumvirate. The Holy Trinity, not Triumvirate. Manchester United team with Dennis Law and George Best and Bobby Charlton. That's the first English team to ever win the European Cup. And after them, it's a long, long run before another English team does. which really comes to my life. I think there's AC Milan, Feyenoord, and then you've got a couple of 3 in a rows. You've got Ajax, the great Cruyff team, and then 3 in a row, Bayern Munich, the great Beckenbauer and Gerd Müller team. Win 3 in a row. Before 77, the year after I'm born, where we have a massive run of total English dominance. We've got a couple of Liverpool teams win it back to back. Forest teams win it back to back. Another Liverpool team wins, I think it's Villa, then Hamburg, then Liverpool again. This complete period of dominance. So the felt when I was a child, when I start remembering, I don't really remember the 82 World Cup. The 86 World Cup is the cornerstone of my football experience. England playing at the Azteca, something we've just redeemed. We get beaten by the glory of Maradona, the greatest player ever. Now, when I was a kid going into that World Cup, it felt almost fait accompli that the greatest player in history was Pelé. The one who invented things, who changed the game, who changed the picture of football. Interestingly, when we're replaced, he is replaced by Maradona in '86 as the greatest. Now there are other greats I've already mentioned in this video. Beckenbauer, who changes the role of the sweeper. Cruyff, who changes so much in football. Gerd Müller, who I guess is the Cristiano Ronaldo figure in the fact that the bomber was just a relentless goal scorer. Scored 10 goals in the 1970 World Cup in Mexico. Jumping around a bit, the 82 World Cup is awarded to a fascist dictatorship. As it happens, Franco has popped his clogs. 78 World Cup is awarded to a Peronist government, political ideology that my good mates from Argentina have tried to explain to me more than once. It's a sort of all-encompassing ideology. But by 78, the left and the right of Peronism have fallen out with each other. And then after Peron dies and his famous Evita musical wife has come in, the right side of Peronism has preemptively sort of rejected the left side of Peronism. And then when the Galtieri has his military junta, the mass killing of the left, of trade unionists, is unparalleled. 30,000 probably massacred in the dirty war, students, kids taken away from their parents. A stain on Western history to the extent that I think CIA and MI5 directly participant and complicit. The 78 World Cup final, where Cruyff, the Netherlands get to 74 and 70. Yeah, Cruyff doesn't go as a political act. There's concentration camp, torture camp places just down the road from where that final is held. So the idea that this dictatorship of Trump, who was elected but is stealing the reins of power as we speak, is unparalleled, is unfortunately not the case. Then, as we move forward, you've got moving backwards, the 76 European Championships are held in a country that doesn't even exist. It is in Yugoslavia. Now then, you play up through the quarterfinals, it's just 4 in the semis. So it's in Belgrade and Serbia. What is now Croatia, that's Belgrade and Zagreb, which is now obviously Serbia and Croatia, 2 separate countries. In a 74 World Cup, East Germany play against West Germany. They beat West Germany, causing Germany to completely change the setup of that Beckenbauer-Müller team and go on to win the whole tournament. Where are we? 82. I don't really remember that World Cup. I've got one good story about a babysitter look after me and my brother and my parents coming back a bit early and we were hid under the sofa while they watched Scotland, Brazil, a game that I watched on TV. I wasn't allowed to be up to watch that great game. I went to bed after my parents did. But like I said, the 86 World Cup is the beginning of this Argentina-England World Cup rivalry in my lifetime. 66 is a big Argentina. I think it's a quarter-final of the World Cup. Rattan gets sent off. And I think Alf Ramsey calls the Argentinian team animals. So there's that football frisson existing and bubbling. But obviously there is the political act of Galtieri's 1982 junta, already been in power for 6 years. It's unpopular, the economy's not in a great place, decides to basically, I think it's implied to them that the English are very unlikely in their also parlous economic state, affected by an oil shock, because the problems in the Middle East are very unlikely to intervene, and it's a bit of an open goal, a populist nationalist move to invade the Falklands, a place that the British colonised as sort of a terra nullius. Now we get taught this sort of thing, it could be bullshit. Often it's not the case, but I believe there wasn't really much on that island when the British dropped off their sheep and farmers. Now that that's bubbling again, I think it's to do with resources, but it's always been a thing, the Malvinas, which geographically is very close to Patagonia and nowhere near England, but it's the vestige of the British Empire. It worked out brilliantly for Thatcher. I think it's been to some extent overplayed. We also managed to get North Sea oil, which the Norwegians invest in a sovereign wealth fund, and we invest in massive tax cuts for the ultra wealthy, which has seen this incremental but now exponential growth in inequality, which is completely wrecking our economy right now. Thanks Maggie. But thanks Galtieri. If without that war, that Thatcher got to send people to do some terrible things. The Belgrano is a naval ship full of teenage conscripts going away from the battle, away from the theatre of conflict, that we completely sink the sun disgustingly with the headline "Gotcha" on the back page as young guys are massacred. I missed a bit of the Argentina thing. I'm trying to bring back the unparalleled things. The dirty war in Argentina, about 1% of the population of Argentina is Jewish. The deaths are somewhere, it's north of 10%, maybe it's 15%, are Jewish people. Jewish people are massacred as Jews with the perception that they're probably leftists because they're Jews. It's why some of these things about, the worst attack on Jews as Jews, the October 7th was the worst attack of Jews as Jews since the Holocaust, is clearly bullshit. 86, I'm 10 years old. I got into football over the last few years, but really I was into the culture of football. I used to walk down to over there to Highbury, but it was without permission. It made me into an evil capitalist, going to play football as a 8-year-old on Highbury fields, and the older boys going, "We're going to go to Highbury. Have you got a quid?" A quid was an unbelievable, huge amount of money. No one could believe. I couldn't believe a child could have, but that's what I worked towards. Trading stickers, cigarette cards, buying and selling, whatever. As I said, it drove me down this path of capitalism so I could have, oh yeah, I've got a quid. Yeah, like it's nothing. Go down to Highbury and get it. I said, well, it might have been a bit less the first time round. Might have been a bit later I was paying a quid. But when I first went, it was to hear swearing. My parents, good church-going people, never swore at home. They were Arsenal fans, but came from non-football attending families. My dad's dad, a petrol head, was trying to get a Formula One drive before the Second World War started. My mum's dad, Welsh rugby obsessive. It was the '66 World Cup is the first time they get to see football on TV. So they watch all of the '66 World Cup, love it, and each other, get together, eventually move to Islington in '71, where the double is done, there are parties on the street. They live then on the street that now Charlie George lives on there, up and down Canonbury, people feeding them champagne. They immediately became Arsenal glory hunters, and then saw us win not very much for most of the next 20 years. Diversion. The '86 World Cup, the greatest player of all time, Maradona, the scales are removed from my eyes. That's when I see football for what it is, as beauty, as art. I don't understand Maradona's figure of solidarity, but I recognise him for the genius he is, and that's when this settled science that Pele was the greatest ever is removed, and it's Maradona. I talked briefly about that, Euros being held in a country that no longer exists, in Yugoslavia. The winners of those Euros against a Beckenbauer, Müller Germany team is Czechoslovakia. They beat them on penalties. The winning penalty is scored by Panenka. You can football aficionados will know exactly what that winning penalty looked like. '86. Does it mirror today? I think it's now settled that Messi, I mean, I can't remember who it was that said Messi's an alien, picked someone else, Maradona's the greatest person to ever play football, but Messi's an alien. No one else, maybe ever, will have that 20-year span. Individual awards in team sports are kind of bullshit. I mean, the first Ballon d'Or is Stanley Matthews, a guy whose career is basically coming to the end when it's awarded to him. A bit like when Ryan Giggs gets his Player of the Year award at the back end of a glorious career, or something to reflect the whole thing. When Messi and Ronaldo are both in La Liga and they're sharing 3s and 4s of Ballon d'Ors, I actually think Iniesta is part of the greatest, we talked about greatest strike force, the greatest midfield of all time is not, for me, that Modric, Casemiro and Cruz midfield that wins the Champions League 3 times in a row, but is in fact the Spain and Barcelona midfield of Busquets, Iniesta and Xavi. The '86 World Cup is what reveals to me the true beauty of football. I was just 10 years old. I think everyone's favourite World Cup is normally the one from between when they're 10 and 12 years old. It's sad, my 14-year-old boy hasn't really got into this World Cup, and I think part of it is the stupid kickoff times. I don't think he's particularly anti-US or Republican politics. Not that no one likes Trump, but he's not that connected to it as a thing. But these stupid kickoff times and the lack of jeopardy are a problem. Are the greatest teams always the same teams? I think no. The backstop of the great Brazil team, the Mexico World Cup of 1970, is Pele, who's been kicked out of the '66 team. English teams completely dominated the European Cup for about 8 years. The Premier League's now the strongest league in the world, but we're not dominated. Paris Saint-Germain seemed like the strongest team in the world. This is a team created in 1970, at the same time as Pele was winning the World Cup, when Paris FC, Saint-Germain FC are combined into one club. I think that the fault lines of which could still be seen a bit within the PSG supporter base definitely could when we played them in '94, different groups of their fans. I think not split to some extent ethnically. We're beating the shit out of each other while we drew and then beat a great Paris Saint-Germain team. I believe that was the semi-final. In the quarter-final, when we beat Torino, and they had one of the great Uruguayan players in midfield, and we man-marked, oh God, I've gone blank, won the Libertadores several times with River Plate. We man-marked him out, oh God. See, this is the trouble with doing the whole thing live. When I was talking to my wife and my kids about politics and the history of football, I said, you're making these stats up. When you do it all live in one cut, I might have to HMRC football podcast myself at the end of this. That was it Hilliard or Keown who marks him? Who knows? The 1994 Paris Saint-Germain team is amazing. George Weah, who goes on to be another Ballon d'Or winner. Ginola, a player punished by the French for their failure to qualify for the 1994 World Cup. Talking about this, my perceived dominance. As a child, England have won the European Cup over and over and over again. Easy to forget that England failed to qualify. They're not there in 78 in Argentina. They're not there in West Germany in 74. Team beaten, or the Soviet Union get beaten, I think, in the 72 Euros. Another by the West Germans. Another team that doesn't, country that doesn't exist anymore. I think that when the Euros are held in Czechoslovakia, when Czechoslovakia win the Euros and it's held in Yugoslavia, it's the only time that a major football tournament is held in a socialist country. There's a back and forth with the Olympics in the Soviet Union, I think it's Moscow, and then Los Angeles, and each of them boycotts the other. Got another LA Olympics coming up, I believe. Right. I bumped around the history. Let's talk about tonight. I wanted to keep this under 25 minutes. I saw the Star. I've already slagged off the Sun for one headline. The Star's back page. I remember a disgusting back page in Euro 96 when we're playing the Germans. Them implying that the German team connected to fascism, which was terrible. And they had Stuart Pearce with a World War II Tommy's helmet on. Horrific. I like the Daily Star's back page. Who you gonna call to stop Messi? Goatbusters, and it's got Messi's head in the Ghostbusters logo, the circle with the stripe through it, and got Bellingham and Harry Kane with their Ghostbusters backpack. It's going to be hard to stop Messi. I've spoken on WhatsApp messages back and forth with lots of very good friends in Argentina our friendships will be temporarily suspended for 24 hours, is what I'm being told. Shout outs to lots of them. This Argentina team is very, very different from either of the previous ones. Even though 86 was backstopped by Maradona, who carried them, and 78, all the goals are scored by Mario Kempes. They were more coherent outfits. They were playing to their strengths rather than sacrificing themselves on the altar of the opponent's weaknesses. Now, Messi, like I said, is an alien. No one has been able to do what he could do. I remember Wenger saying he was the greatest player in the world when he was still a teenager. He can kill you at any point. Talking down Messi is a fool's errand. As an Arsenal fan, there seemed like an annual messellation for our end Wenger teams, where he humiliated us. One, I remember thinking that he'd hit a shot into Almunia's face that had popped up and gone in. But Barcelona, they're a bit of a joke, the way that they keep opposing fans back for hours and hours. It's disgusting. I hate it. I was glad in the quarterfinals, semis, that when Atleti beat Barcelona, not because I was scared of Barcelona. I think that the high line that they play is borderline Postecoglou-esque. I thought that we could take this Barcelona team to pieces. Talking about that Barcelona and Spain teams and their parallel, the Barcelona version was better. This Spain team is much better than the Barcelona La Liga champions, in my opinion. Even though Yamal does less, obviously, in this team than he's able to for Barcelona. Messi has walked for, I think, 52% of this World Cup. The legs are put around him. Paredes, obviously, De Paul, lots of these players, even the forwards, Alvarez, their work rate is there to cover the problem. Now, we're not necessarily a team set up to exploit that. Spain very much are. Spain's ball retention, I think, can expose Argentina. We're a team set up to counter-attack. I think we'd be a team more likely to beat the massive favourites who I see probably winning, whoever gets there, Spain, than Argentina are. I think that, if Spain can force teams to run about, you can't make Messi run about, but if he doesn't, they can expose it. We're reliant. We're reliant now on the non-Arsenal superstars. Unfortunately, the Arsenal superstars have fallen off. The attritional level of this season, Saliba's gone, back, shot, Saka playing on one leg, Rice had to be substituted at half time, back gone as well. This could expose the start of our season. But just talking about international football, the superstars England have now are just Kane and Bellingham. Saka could be within that group, Rice could be within that group, but I don't think the petrol is in the tank for them to reflect that. I pray I'm wrong. Maybe they could kick on tonight. I think it's going to be an extremely tight game. Like mate Hernan said, 4-3 to one of us. I think it could be that sort of game. There are flaws in both defences. I think by the accident of us running out of right backs has forced us into the Gehi-Stones combo, which I like much better. Putting Konza out to the right as an exclusively defensive right back. In a perfect world, you want Reece James out there, one of our other world-class players, but also made of biscuits. I wonder whether there's any chance of him being fit. Who knows? I'm closing in on half an hour. It isn't unparalleled to have a World Cup in a city, in a nation descending into fascism, and it isn't clear and decided always who the best players are forever, and it isn't always the same teams, even the same places where the tournaments are held, despite Mexico holding it more than once and the USA holding it more than once. Let's see. I love Messi. I was delighted when Argentina did it last time. I'll be delighted if we can send him off into the night with only a semi-final place to be shown for it in the last year. Who knows? Come on, England. Come on, Arsenal. It might have been rambling and lost. I don't know if all those dates are going to be right, but at least I did it in one cut.